where did your love and fascination for magic begin?
It began when I went to Walt Disney World in Orlando. I think I was there when they were open for like a month and a half. So this is in the late
Hmm.
60s. And I went to the magic shop, which used to be all magic. In fact, the one in California, Steve Martin worked at as a
Yeah.
magician. And I went in there and the magician did this trick, this famous trick with, he puts these two sponge bunnies in my hand and he said abracadabra, and I opened my hand and it was filled with baby bunnies. And I was like, I can do that. And I took the two big rabbits, I put them on my hand and waved my hand over it and said abracadabra and opened it up and it didn't happen. I was stuck. I was bitten by the magic bug at that
Mhm.
point. And so that kind of started my journey. I think I was like 4.5,
Mm.
and I was just absolutely amazed by that. So I started getting into magic and I started reading as much as I could on things like about close-up magic with cards and coins. And I'm a little guy. I'm 5'4", 5'5" on a best day. So my hands are small too, and all of these tricks, a lot of these magicians are like 6 feet tall. They have these massively large hands. They can hide a card. So, and back in those days, there were no DVDs or videotape. Everything was like illustrations where they would have one picture of a move and lots of words describing it,
Mm.
which to me these days is still, that's the best way to
Mm.
learn, in my opinion. So I kept reading all of this stuff. Of course, I couldn't do any of it at all until I think I was like 13 or 14. All of a sudden, my hand got to be the right size. All of a sudden, all of the learnings kind of took over. But it was around 7. I had tricks, that kind of worked by themselves. And I started doing, I remember we found out that there was a magic shop where I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. It was called Bob Hutchings Magic
Hmm.
Shack. It was this magician, and he had a shed in his backyard, and he tricks that he sold and tricks that he made. And like the first Saturday of every month, he would have a get together, and other kids and performers would perform stuff. And we found out about it from a kid. I was like 7. We found out about it from a kid that my dad knew his dad. He was like 16 years old, and we went there, and I saw this kid perform, and I was hooked. So we started buying tricks, and I think at 7.5, because this kid had a business card. I
Mm.
told my dad I wanted business cards, so we made up business cards. It was Jeffrey the Great. I had my phone number on there, and I think it was around 8 years old. I did my first magic show for $5 for a friend's birthday party. And then I started doing more and more birthday parties. And then I got to the point where I was making $25 and I would do 2 birthday parties in a weekend. And it just started building up from there. And, what I realized over time is that the tricks work, but doing a great trick is 99% the story behind it and how you present it. In magic lingo, what we would call the patter.
Hmm.
The reveal in the trick itself is a very small aspect of
Mm.
it. Now, close-up magic is a little different because there's the skill that's involved, but still, some of the best illusions that I do with cards, the skill is nothing.
Hmm.
It's very, very simple, but it's the story behind it, and it's how you present it. So I kept doing more and more shows. And then as I got into high school, I started working. In my last year of high school, we moved to Maryland. So I started working in a restaurant doing magic there when they were busy on the weekends. And then I started doing more and more of it throughout college. And then when I moved to Southern California to go to chiropractic college, I was in the area for the Magic Castle.
Mm.
And I was like, this is like my dream, but you have to be 21 to be there. And I was only 19 at that point because I skipped a grade and got early admittance to chiropractic college. So I I fudged my year so I could get in there at 20 instead of 21. And auditioned, and then became a member and started working there.
Wow.
And then I also worked at other restaurants in the area as well too, primarily doing cards and coin magic,
Oh,
and loved it.
yeah. What was it like for you to be working at the Magic Castle? And just for context, for most of the audience who maybe doesn't know the Magic Castle, it's a very famous and exclusive magic restaurant, essentially, is what you would call it, or magic club, essentially, where you can go and they have some of the best magicians that perform there. It's basically members only or invite only to be able to even watch the shows. So it must have been an incredible experience for you at that age. What was that like to actually be working there?
It was just the absolute wildest thing. It was a dream come true because, I grew up in knowing that Johnny Carson, who was a magician, every night after he filmed The Tonight Show would go there and hang out.
Wow.
I mean, when I joined there, Cary Grant was on the board of directors. I would go there to just hang out because this famous magician, his name is Di Vernon, and he was this legendary card sleight of hand artist that, as he got older, the castle kind of moved him to Los Angeles, gave him a place to live, and he would just hang out there. And I would sit down next to him and watch him, in his 70s and 80s do these most ridiculous moves that never in a million years would I be able to do. So you're just in awe of his skill. And he would just sit there all afternoon. And it's just wild now. I look back on it and I realize I didn't take in as much as I could have. I wish I had spent even more time there, but I was going to chiropractic college. This was like a side thing, but it was still just absolutely amazing. But still it's interesting because, my wife always reminds me of this story, which was very important for her. I had worked there on and off, and then we got engaged, and then I was working there again. And I was working, I think that week I was working the late shift. So it's like you do a show at like 10, 11, and 12. And the castle's wild because there's like 7 bars in there. Magicians, we love our bars and we love our magic. So part of the deal was the pay there was just horrible, but part of the deal was you would get dinner. So my fiance, my wife and I, her fiance at that time, we went at around 8:00 to sit down and have dinner. And we sat down, and this other famous magician sat down with us. And I said, "Can I help you?" He says, "Yeah, I've watched your show a couple of times. I want to talk to you. I'm having dinner with you tonight. I want to talk to you about your career." And I said to him, "No, you're not having dinner with us. I'm having dinner with my fiance. Thank you very much." And I pushed him away. And my wife was like, now in these days we look back on it and I'm like, I can't believe that I did that. But, I had my priorities. My priorities at that point was her. She was number one. Magic was fun, and school was was in second or third place at that time because I had to finish school. I had to get done with it. And magic was fun for me, plus a good way to make money too. But when I was in LA at that time, and this was like 85, 86, magic had not yet exploded in Vegas. It wasn't a big thing. But around 87, magic was taking off in Vegas. And I had an opportunity to go work in Vegas and make a lot of money. And I called my dad. And I said to him, "Hey, I have this opportunity. What do you think about it?" And he says, "If you want to fuck up your life, go right ahead." And I was like, so first off, I'll never forget that. And I remember being just like, that is the most irresponsible thing that a parent could ever tell a child, And I wasn't a child at that point. I was 20, 21. Right. I was still young. Yeah. I said to myself, that is the worst thing that a parent could say to a child. I would never, ever be in a situation like that where I would ever say that. But I have to be honest. I've never said it, but there have been so many times where I've had to stop myself from saying it. So I'm thankful that my father said it to me, that I could remember what it feels like so that I wouldn't say it to my own daughter.
Mhm.
And so that's a tough thing. That one of the things that you want to do, at least for me, when you have kids, like I made a decision, like I got beaten up as a kid by my father because that was all the rage back then. Beaten up, belt, sent to the hospital, bad beats as a kid. And I made sure as a young kid, I said, I'm never, ever going to put my hands on my child. But I got to say, saying that statement that he said was probably worse than beating up a child. It's pretty impactful, but it taught me a great lesson, which is I'm never, ever, ever going to say that. And I think any parent has felt where they want to say that to their adult child.